What is your business format for 2024? Hi, everyone. My name is Willie Miranda, and I'm with Brian Miranda.
Hi, everybody.
And Brian and I were just talking last week. We had a great meeting going over, like we do every year, we do semi-annual planning, talking about the next year, right? And we're talking about what are the things that we need to focus on going into the next year. So it's been really great for us as a company. But I want to share the format with you because I think that a lot of agents that we talked to about it just made it really clear, right? We talk about business plans, we talk about different things that we should be planning to do in a new year, and people just become blank and they're like, well, where do I start? So I want to share with you a couple things that we just took from our business planning meeting to give you just kind of more of a format of what you can follow. And there's really 5 things that we're going to talk about today. So I'll just jump in, Brian, and start off with the first thing is, when we're sitting there and we're looking at going into the new year, we always reflect back on the prior year. So we're looking now at 2023, and we call it bright spots. What were the bright spots in 2023? What really worked going in? And we looked at all the different things that we did, from lead generation to work with sellers, to work with buyers, customer service, employees, agents, agent retention. We just went through the whole list, and we just picked out our top bright spots for the year in 2023. And it was really eye-opening, Brian. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, strategic planning. You guys are entrepreneurs, and as an employee, when you're an employee, right, you expect to get a review at least annually, sometimes semi-annually. And part of that review process is, what did you do well? What worked well? And I think entrepreneurs really don't take the time to give themselves a personal review. So I know we do it as a company every year. We do strategic planning with a consultant that kind of keeps us accountable to what we're doing. And I think one of the important things, Willie, is to identify, as we're going to talk about a little bit here, give some examples of bright spots, disappointments. What are you going to keep doing that you're doing well that gets identified in that review process? What is it that you're going to stop doing because you're finding out, something that you tried or you explored, it's not working. It's time to, when's it time to cut the cord?
Right.
We see a lot of agents get into that trap with lead generation, right? And then what is it that you're going to start doing that you haven't done? Maybe there was a marketing plan, geographical farming. I know you're going to talk about that next week, some training. Maybe you want to go after a particular neighborhood. Maybe there's something that you've been putting off until you had a few closings, so more money, or maybe you're just procrastinating, right? Mm-hmm. So all those things we can go into that format, go a little bit deeper, Willie.
Yeah. So on a piece of paper, what I would do is I recommend, and we have actual forms that we have this already typed up, but write down what were the bright spots for 2023. So start there, right? Find a quiet place, pour yourself a glass of wine or coffee or whatever, you feel best on doing this type of planning. And I remember years ago, Brian, sitting down near the Mohawk River, and I would sit down there for a couple hours and just be jotting things down. Why? My phone wasn't ringing. I had no one, got a minute. There was no distractions, and I like being around water and being able to think. And that's what I would recommend. I used to go to a local library and do it there as well. I did that for many years, but being able to go through that, looking, reflecting back, seeing all the bright spots for 2023. Next one Brian mentioned is about disappointments, right? We all have disappointments, things we didn't get to. Maybe it was, like you said, geographic farming. Maybe it was not hiring the right person, or maybe, you were looking to have someone assist you, right? But then the market was kind of iffy this year. So you're like, can I really afford someone, right? But what were those disappointments that you had? Maybe it was a listing goal that you had. Maybe it was a buyer goal that you had. But writing those down are very important. And you don't want to make a laundry list, right? Like Sean, our business coach that we work through this with, always says, like, you don't want to write a book, but what were the top 5, 6 disappointments that you had in 2023? Same thing with bright spots, right? So those are the 2. So in other words, what's your bright spots were for 2023? What were your disappointments? And then from there, now we look into the future, Brian. We look into 2024. What are we going to keep doing? Like, what worked really good in 2023, right? And when you go over your bright spots, you're going to know, hey, this really worked good. We're going to keep this going into new year. So keep would be the 3rd thing I would add to that.
Yeah, well, I think a great place to start is look at your transactions that you had this year, right? Where did the leads come from? Were they referrals?
Right.
Was it a lead source that you started doing that worked out well? You know, those, so those are going to share some of those bright spots. What were some of those transactions that went very smooth, right? Maybe you just got lucky, you had great clients, or maybe it's because you had a checklist, you were organized, and the transaction went smooth. So that's where you're going to identify some of your bright spots. Some of your disappointments, looking at those transactions, what could you have done better? Maybe your communication, you know, skills weren't the greatest, and it reflected in the transaction. Maybe you weren't as organized as you could be. So maybe you want to utilize some things like checklist, right? Or maybe you invested heavily in a lead source that didn't pan out. So go back to those transactions and look at those transactions, and you can get a lot of these answers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, I just one that came to mind that we get all the time is, you know, like Zillow, right? Everyone's like, either you love Zillow or you hate Zillow. But for a lot of people, Zillow is very profitable because it's an online marketing tool that they have. It's very expensive. But a lot of times, you know, when we look back, and if you're going to keep that moving forward, did you have a positive return on investment, right? Was it a positive ROI? If it wasn't, why? Sometimes it's not because the leads suck, it's because the follow-up sucked to it, right? And that's what we usually find out. But why is it that some agents are very successful with Zillow and others are not? And it comes down to follow-up. And it comes down to, you know, not just calling that person once or twice and saying, they didn't call me back, they're not interested. It's calling that person back 15, 20, 30 times, whatever it takes to connect to that person. And it's a call, it's a text, and it's an email to them, right? So again, not to get too much into lead generation, but going back into what are you going to keep going into 2024 is very important when you analyze your business. And I like what you said, Brian, go back to all your lead sources as to where it came from. If a lot of it came from your COI and past clients, then do more activities for that, right? Yeah. Double down on that going into this year. So let's talk about the next category on that is really when you know, you're going to keep something, what are you going to stop? Maybe give some examples of that, Brian.
Yeah. So like, as I mentioned before, you know, even going back to some of your transactions, you can identify quickly, you know, I'm going to stop using a particular vendor. Maybe, you know, you paired up with a vendor. I'm not going to pick anyone that you used before in the past, and they dropped the ball and they made you look bad. Right. And maybe it happened on more than one transaction. So that could be an example. Maybe that you're looking at marketing that you put out there and it wasn't getting as many hits or as many views, or you're spending money on things that you haven't touched. I know agents like to buy a lot of shiny objects, and then they don't log into them, right? They'll buy a lot of apps or websites and subscriptions, and then, you know, look back, you know, I invested $500 on this one subscription, and you know, me personally, I didn't log into the website, so I'm not utilizing. If you're not utilizing, that's something that you have to stop. And I think looking at P&L, you know, what's profitable for you and what's going to be a loser for you or a loss for you. That's somewhere where you could identify those stops.
All right, let's move into the fifth piece, which is start. What are you going to start doing, right? There's a lot of different things that are out there that we know work, but we haven't been able to get around to, or maybe it's just something that, again, you didn't know too much about, but now you're learning more about it, right? So an example would be, we know that email is not dead, right? I just had an agent today say, I thought email was kind of fading out. Email is not dead. And actually, we're going to be talking about it at our next Real Estate Success Blueprint, where I'm actually going to do a whole segment on how to really structure an email campaign to your COI, to your database, and all the people that you know. But maybe that's an example. Maybe you're going to start something like that, where you're going to be able to get the content that you want to send out, plan ahead of time for what emails you're going to send out. And that's, you know, it's going to be a profitable endeavor because it's something that you're not doing now. You're not staying top of mind with your clients. Maybe you're going to start an online campaign and doing Zillow. Maybe you're going to do something with social media and hiring a marketing company. Maybe you're going to hire an admin person or a virtual assistant to help you with things. But the start piece is very important as well, because, and again, you don't want to start 10 different things, but what are the top 2 or 3 things that you can start that is going to have a major impact on the bottom line going into 2024?
Yeah, it's a great point. Throughout this whole process, if you get anything, don't write down your priorities, but then force yourself to pick 3 to 5 top priorities that have to happen, because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And, you know, you want to start really being intentional about going after the business. I know the past few years, agents have been spoiled where their phones are ringing, businesses coming to them. If we learned anything from 2023, the market's changing, it's becoming more challenging. There was a lot of realtors that came into the business in the last couple of years, and you watch in the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of realtors exiting the business because they're not doing strategic planning like we're talking about here, Willie.
You're going to see that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
When you see a lot of people not renewing I'm already seeing it now. I'm hearing a lot of noise on not renewing their licenses, right? Because they're getting out of the business. So, and some of that's good. And some of it's pretty sad because people didn't do the right planning. They didn't have the right coaching, mentoring, and really the direction that they really needed to do to grow their business. So let's wrap up with the 5 things, right? We talked about it, writing down your bright spots for 2023, writing down all the different things that you were disappointed about in 2023. And then the last thing is going into 2024. What are you going to keep? What are you going to stop doing? And what are you going to start for 2024? Ryan, anything in closing?
Yeah, and I would say once you identify all this information, you want to share it with someone that you respect, maybe a business partner, but someone that can hold you accountable. Really, we found that accountability is a key success component, because a lot of people will come up with a plan, say they're going to do all these things, but then there's no one to hold them accountable to it, and it doesn't get done. So find an accountability partner, I think, would go a long way. Come up with the plan first, and then find someone to hold you accountable to it.
Awesome. So I hope you like the information that we share with you on this video. Looking forward to seeing everyone in 2024. We got some announcements coming up here pretty soon. We got our Real Estate Success Summit coming March 12th. We're lining up some great speakers for that. And with that being said, scroll down below. If you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook, leave a comment and let's go get them this week.